free webinar put on by the Out of Eden Walk project. And this is a project that's sponsored by the National Geographic Society as well as the Knight Foundation. And one thing that I'd like to ask all participants at this point is to click the mute button. A lot of you have audio feeds coming in, and essentially it just adds to the background noise. And so if everyone can just mute their audio, that's done with by clicking the audio button at the very top of the page and then clicking the mute, or you might see a little icon next to your audio. My name is Jeff Blossom, and I'll be the primary host for the webinar today. And a couple of logistical things here. So what you should be seeing is a slide showing how to access our online environment for the next hour. And the first thing to look for is this number 1 on the left. You should see this Jeff Blossom tab, which is my screen. I'm going to be sharing my screen for the entire webinar. And then number 2, you should also have your participants window open, and that will allow you to see the video feed from whoever is talking. And it looks like I see a picture of someone else, not myself, but I don't know. Does everyone see a picture of me? I'll wave my hand to everyone to give a nice welcome. Okay, great. And then if you want to interact, we ask that you use the chat button. Go ahead and mute your audio. We're going to have too many people here to all be talking in questions. So please use your chat button as questions arise, and we will do our best to answer all the questions that everyone has. So like I said, I'm Jeff Blossom. I'm with the Center for Geographic Analysis at Harvard University. I'm a digital cartographer there and also a GIS specialist. And we have 3 other hosts with us today. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves there, starting with Julia.
Thanks, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you and see your video feed.
Great. Well, like you said, I'm Julia. I'm the project manager for the U.S.-based nonprofit Eden Walk 501c3, and I am coming in from Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you, Julia. I failed to mention I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and next let's hear from Sarah Shea.
Hi, I'm Sarah Shea. I go by Shea, and I'm the project coordinator of Out of Eden Learn, one of the educational partners of the Out of Eden Walk, and I am in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Thanks, Shea. Welcome. And next with Liz.
I think Liz might not have your mic turned.
All right. Hi, sorry about that. My name is Liz Stills-Derising. I'm calling from the same place as Shea. I co-direct Out of Eden Learn, which I'll be talking about shortly. Okay,
so that's the host, and you'll be hearing from all of us during this presentation. And essentially what we're going to do is first off explain this Out of Eden Walk project, what it is, also what the cartographic and educational goals are, and then we're going to make maps. I'm going to demonstrate how to make maps right away, essentially, and I'll invite everyone to walk along, at least with the first exercise. We're going to use Batch Geo and then this thing called QGIS, and then we'll show everyone some Esri story maps that we've made. And then at the end, we'll show everyone how to access the step-by-step instructions to enable anyone to use maps to tell stories. So essentially, those are the objectives there. We want to inspire everyone here to certainly think about using maps and attempt to make them, because there's many ways you can use them either in your daily life or as part of curriculum as if you're an educator. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Julia to give us an introduction into the Out of Eden Walk project.
Thanks, Jeff. So I imagine that everyone who's on is familiar with the walk and what it is, but I just wanted to give people a little bit of context and a brief recap about the themes of the walk. And one of the main themes of the walk is about slowing down, obviously. It's a slow journalism project, a kind of a return to observing the world closely and thinking before writing in an age of minimized attention spans thanks to digital reporting and social media. So by traveling on foot, Paul is kind of forced to slow the pace of his information gathering while covering the major stories of our day along the Eden Walk Trail. So the stories that he covers are kind of whatever he walks through and dependent on the people that he meets, but whether they involve human conflict, cultural endurance, global health crises, mass migration, stories of the deep past always kind of inform the daily headlines. And Paul has found that by going slowly, he's far better able to uncover the deep past of all of our history while reporting on these current day issues. So focusing on the small details he sees is another major theme of the walk. And walking reveals that even the smallest details can carry profound meaning. So one example is that by observing closely, Paul noticed that the footwear of nearly everyone in rural Ethiopia was these cheap sandals, and found that they were, both versatile and produced domestically. And so that detail that he noticed to a story on appropriate technology and how strangely impoverishing consumerism can be. So that's just one example of how his methods of slowing down and really looking and engaging with the people he walks into in his environment resulted in a story that others may have walked right by. So connecting individually with other humans is another major goal of the project. And by walking through cities and towns in a relaxed, kind of quiet manner, you can't avoid having encounters with people. And obviously Paul has an interesting story to share about why he's there, what he's doing there. But he kind of is able to step back being on foot and let other people tell him their stories and share their experiences with him, which he can then share with us in the wider Out of Eden Walk audience following. So he's not just walking his way across the world, he's listening his way across the world, and he's sharing the journeys of the people he meets and listens to along the way. So those are the major themes and a few images from the walk trail. And those were taken from a video made recently titled Slowing Your Reporting Metabolism, which we will share at the end of the webinar. Thanks, Jeff.
So yeah, very, very exciting project. And when Paul was here at Harvard, he came into my office in 2012 and told me about this project and said, I want maps to be an integral part of this project. I want to make maps showing everything from, this global route that I'm walking down to minute details of the neighborhoods that I'm going through, and, want to highlight all kinds of themes along with this project. So I've been fortunate to be the one making maps for him as he goes along the way. Like this map that shows, the route that he's following and talks about, human migration, right? This is a global map. And then we've also made several much more detailed maps, like this one called Walking Jeddah, where what you see on the right here are Paul's GPS locations with the red dots there on the satellite photo. And then each story or each picture, or sometimes their videos, are linked to the exact locations on the map. So it's a very engaging way for someone to interact with the map. And this is essentially what we're going to show people, is how to make one of these maps. But for now, I'd like to bring Liz into the conversation and let her talk about Out of Eden Learn a little bit and how maps figure into that.
Great, thank you, Jess. So Out of Eden Learn, and I think there are some of our educated participants in on this call. In fact, I know there are some, so hello. But for those of you who aren't familiar, Out of Eden Learn is a dedicated online learning community that invites young people from around the world to slow down, as school is doing, and to exchange stories and perspectives with other students about people, place, and identity. And in a nutshell, groups of students who we put together in diverse, we call walking parties, they engage in a series of activities that we've designed. They post their work for others in a dedicated space. You can see in the visual there, that's our custom-built website. And then they can view and comment on each other's work. So one of our activities is actually the second activity that students typically do when they take part in a learning journey with us. Explicitly asks them to make a map of their neighborhood or their local area as seen through their eyes. So we're not asking for an exact rendition of the place they live. It is very much as they see it. And they're then asked to write a true story that goes with the map, and I'm kind of going to read some of the instructions here. So that could involve a single place on the map or the whole map. It could be a memory of something that happened to them when they were younger at one of the places in the map. It could be a typical day in their lives that features places on the map, a story about a place on the map they've heard from someone else that maybe happened before they were even born. Or it could be a story of how the place has changed over time, as gleaned from talking to other people in the community. So you can see there that we frame our activity pretty broadly as a way of inviting young people to share those perspectives with one another. And the point of the activity really is to get them to think in new ways about where they live and what's important to them and to people who are maybe living around them. And it opens up ways for young people to connect with one another. And I think about how does place shape who we are and the lives that we're living. Now, what we've found is that they often learn a great deal about their classmates who might have a very different experience or perspective on the very same place. And it also, because they're matched up with classrooms in different parts of the world, they start to get a glimpse of the kinds of lives that other people are living who are growing up in different places, which I think enables them to think about where they live and who they are in new ways. Certainly, we've had really positive feedback from students and educators about this activity in particular. Now, since we've started Out of Eden Learn, which was the full version has been running now for 2.5 years, we've seen a beautiful variety of maps, and some of them have been really very original, like the one I'm going to share with you now. So what you see on the screen now is a map by a 5th grade student in Marblehead, Massachusetts, just down the road from us here in Cambridge. And the student goes by the pseudonym EDT Village. I'm just going to read what she wrote to go with this map. She says, "This is my mapped photo. In my map," okay, so say that, she handed the work and then took a photograph of the map to be able to share it with the student. She says, "In my map, I put my neighborhood at night from a moth perspective, so it shows all the lights. I can just close my eyes and envisage these moths fluttering around the lights. My story for this drawing is that every night I come home and I see a moth just absent-mindedly fluttering around, and when it gets dark, flowing onto the lights in one big flurry of wings. It's not that interesting, but every night it's a comfort to shut the door and see the little moth lift off the light and then settle down once again. I didn't colour anything because the dark covers everything up like a blanket." And then she writes goodbye, because she's talking there to all the other students who would see that work. So this map, which at first glance might look, not the most colourful map that you've seen, I think the story, the imagination, the little glimpse that we see of that 5th grade student is really very beautiful. And I'll show you one other example, if you want to flick the slide forward. This time, this comes from a high school student in Mumbai, India, goes by the name of Chanel. People in our learning community use pseudonyms, actually, to protect their identity. And I'll read for you, and this is just an excerpt. This is a very lengthy description of what this is. She says here, I've drawn a map showing you parks which still have specimens of stunning rain trees, Brownia, Amherstia, Barringtonia, Bahonia, Gulmohar, and other flowering trees. We are also surrounded by temples and churches and the Arabian Sea in the east and west. When India was a British colony, most of the British officers lived on this hill and drove down to their fort in their carriages. Today, we are confronted with 3 lanes of traffic each way on Marine Drive and bumper-to-bumper traffic, taxis, motorcycles, buses, cars, all racing to get ahead at the same time. So I think that gives you a little glimpse of what her life is. And then, because our platform allows students to engage, what subsequently happened was that students who were doing this map from countries such as Australia and Canada, they then wrote to Chanel and asked for more specific details about the map, such as how long did it take her to get to school, what was it like to live near the sea. So in this way, on Out of Eden Learn, maps can spark up conversations and offer glimpses or windows into young people's everyday lives and realities. So I'll stop there, but hopefully that is food for thought on the wonders of maps and what they can lead to, I think, educationally.
Yes, I find that truly inspirational, Liz. As a person who makes maps for a living and makes maps every day, to see, children in the classroom making maps, you learn about your world so much that way. And, drawing maps out by hand is still something I do, because sometimes I just get lost in the digital world and have to just draw it out to get ideas clear. So thank you for sharing all of that. So I think we've waited long enough. Let's get started and actually start making a map here. So what I'm going to do is use a Google Sheet, which is essentially a spreadsheet hosted by Google. And if people want to follow along on their own computers, I invite you to do that. You just need either Microsoft Excel will work fine, or OpenOffice Calc, or like I have, just a Google spreadsheet. And I know I have a bunch of students attending who are in front of computers, and so I want to go at a pace here that those students can follow along. And we're just going to start with a blank spreadsheet and add some information and make a map of this. So let me increase the size of this screen a little bit so it's more visible. I'm essentially making 2 columns here, one called location and one called type. And what I want to do is make a map of travel destinations that the hosts of the webinar are interested in going to. And the first step involves, putting this information into some sort of spreadsheet. So a place that I would like to go to that I've never been, that I've heard is really fantastic, is Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I'm going to put in another place, Bali, that I'd like to go to as well. And maybe let's go to Liz next. Liz, what 2 places are you interested in going to? Oh, sorry, Liz. I think you might be on mute.
Keep doing that. So I'm going to say Assam in India, place I want to go to, and let me think. I'll say somewhere I've been to before, but which I like, which is Melbourne, Australia.
And what was the first place, Liz? In India? I didn't quite get it.
ASSAM.
Okay, Julia, how about you? What places do you want to go to?
I was going to say Australia, but to keep it different, I've been wanting to see Wyoming here in America.
Okay.
And I also kind of want to go to Antarctica at some point. So let's throw that in there.
Okay, great. Very cold down there, I hear. Shea, how about you?
I'd like to go to Barcelona. And can I join you in volley chess?
Absolutely. I think there's room for both of us and whoever else wants to go.
Great.
So if you're following along, just make a simple list. You know, I've added 8 locations here, and you don't have to have 8. It's just, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever you have. Essentially, just type them in like this, where you have one location column and one column called type. If you want, I'm going to add one more location that I think everyone might enjoy going to, and that's Disney World. Okay, so now we have some places here on our list, and next we're going to make a map of those. So what you do is highlight all of the information you've entered. Make sure you highlight the top row, the header row, and then if you right-click, then you can choose to copy that, right? So it's just a list of places. We're going to copy that, and then open up another tab on your browser. We're going to go to a new website here. If you're doing this in Excel, then open up a web browser and go to batchgeo.com. So that's just BATCHGEO.com. So once you're in BatchGeo, then you just click in this window here that I'm moving my mouse over right now, and it'll highlight everything in blue. Now that's just sample data. When it's highlighted in blue, right-click, and then do paste.
Yes.
And then you should barely be able to see your information in there. So essentially, we're just copying and pasting our list of places into this BatchGeo application, and then just click this Map Now. So I've clicked that, and at this point, what it does is it goes and it sends each location to the Google geocoder one by one, and where it finds matches, it puts a little dot on the map. And so right away, we can see for Wyoming, we have a green dot right in the middle of Wyoming, and it also then colors it based on that group, right? So down here, my dots are in red, Liz's are blue, Julia's are green, and so on. And so this is a very quick way to make a map right away, and you can load hundreds of locations. And I'm just double checking that it got the location for Disney World correct. And look at that, it put a dot right on the Magic Kingdom Park. And you know, one of the nice things about this map, I can change the satellite view, and suddenly, you know, everyone can explore Disney World in a virtual manner at least, because this map is entirely interactive. See, we've got the Barcelona point from Shea, and I wonder what it did with Antarctica, if we got that point on there. There it is. So using this Google map, Antarctica looks like a huge white mass, much bigger than it really is, but there it is. So what I could do is save this and then type in my email address, and then I'll have a permanent link to this map. It's a permanent web map that then I can send to anyone, and in fact, it's editable, so I can go in and add locations or change them if I want to. Liz, let me ask you, is this the right place you were looking for in India, in Assam? Is it a province or is it a city?
It's certainly in the north, so yeah, I think that looks correct. It's an area, so yes, I think it's gone for the middle of it.
Okay. So hopefully the people, those of you who tried this, were able to complete it. If not, I certainly invite you to do this, you know, this afternoon after the webinar, because it's just a great way to get up and running using digital maps. So let me go into a little bit of the the way that this magic happens, this mapping happens, and it all starts with this mathematical model called the Geographic Coordinate System. And actually, let me just pause one moment before I get into this. I have word that Paul Salopek himself is on the webinar watching, so we welcome him. We welcome him from his current location in Azerbaijan. Thanks for joining us, Paul, and hope you're enjoying this webinar. Also a reminder to those of you who joined after the webinar started, if you can mute your microphones, that will cut down on some of the background noise that people are hearing around. Okay, so back to this idea of a geographic coordinate system. Essentially, it's this mathematical model that allows us to represent our Earth in terms of using lines of longitude and latitude. So lines of latitude tell us how far north or south we are. Lines of longitude tell us how far east or west we are. And the upshot is that any location on Earth can be represented this way. And the different models, the different softwares that do mapping all understand this latitude-longitude coordinate system. And so here's the only wordy slide that I'll put up in terms of terminology. But right now, there's a huge industry called Geographic Information Systems. And this essentially involves computers and software that are designed for much doing everything associated with geographic information, capturing, storing, updating, manipulating, and then displaying all forms of geographic information. So we're going to start looking at GIS software. Of course, this industry involves different people performing roles within the industry and also common methodologies. So we'll be talking to those. And I'd like to remind all the participants that might have just joined, if you could mute your microphone, because we're getting back. It'll make it a lot easier.
So if you're on the door, like,
so as I'm talking about geographic information, you know, we just saw some points represented on the map. And I think it's worth mentioning that geographic information really comes in 4 major forms. The big map here showing U.S. cities is just simply points, right? You have a latitude, longitude. It's a discrete point on the map, and that's a great way to represent things like, you know, where cities are, or on a more zoomed-in level, where benches are, or fire hydrants, or trees, or a bunch of different things. But if you have something on the Earth's surface that occurs in a linear fashion, like rivers or roads, then using lines to represent those things within the software is necessary. So lines are another way that we represent things on Earth in this software. But that doesn't accurately represent things like administrative areas, right? Like the U.S. state boundary. Or let's say you wanted to map a forest or a wetland. So that's where these things called polygons come into play. Those are just shapes with multi-sides, with many sides, and we'll see those represented as well. Then finally, you have things like aerial images and satellite images, and these are called raster. And this is actually a satellite photo of the National Geographic office in Washington, D.C. here. And so those are used a lot in mapping software, and we'll look at how those are used in addition to the other kinds of geographic features. Another thing to mention here is that along with each feature on the map, we can also associate information. For example, I just brought up a table showing this cities data set. So not only do we have a location on the map for each city, but we also have information such as the name of the city, the state, population, and then all kinds of other information can be built in.
Yeah, the median is the average. The median
so with systems like this, it enables us to show phenomena that occur on the Earth's surface. For example, maps showing the progression of railroads in the United States from 1830 up until 1920, I believe. And this is just a series of maps produced with GIS software that uses lines to represent railroads, and now the animation is starting over. But I like to show this just because, if I were to try and describe how railroads progressed, from the coast and then California across eastward, and then, this whole complex phenomenon, it would be a lot of narrative. It would be a couple chapters in a book, probably.
Okay.
Through maps, hopefully you can get the picture here in just this, minute or so of animation here. Okay, so let's transition and actually show some software. And this part is a little more detailed, so you won't be able to follow along with us here, but I think you'll get a lot out of it. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll show everyone where to download the actual step-by-step exercise to make a map like this one that's shown here. So Shea actually made this map, and as I use the software, she's going to talk a little bit about that. So now I'm showing this QGIS software, and this is essentially GIS mapping software. And right now it's just a blank screen because we haven't added any data or information to it. Notice on the left here I see my desktop so I can access data. On the lower left there's this layers window. We don't have any layers, but let's talk about how that happens and how these GIS maps are made. Well, first of all, you need those data files to add to your map. This Natural Earth Data website is incredible in terms of making available all kinds of GIS data at all different scales. We have physical features available to us, coastlines, islands, rivers, lakes, all kinds of labels, and there's also a whole bunch of cultural data available. And this website was put together by the North American Cartographic Information Society, just using publicly available data sets to make available for people to make maps, like I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to use some of this data to make a map, and then the other data set that I'm going to use is the actual GPS route that Paul has mapped with his handheld GPS. So he has a little GPS like this one that I'm holding up on the screen, and the amazing thing about these devices is that it has a receiver inside that can receive satellite signals that broadcast locations on Earth. So with one of these you can map wherever you are on the planet, and Paul has been doing that ever since he left Ethiopia back in 2013. And he sends me the files that he maps, and then I put them on this world map website for everyone to download. So in the tutorial, it actually walks you through how to go to this website and then download this route. Notice here on this page, I can go and download this data in several different formats. So you need data to do this mapping. So let's look at what a data layer looks like here on the map. Okay, from that Natural Earth website, I just downloaded this file that is a bunch of shapes that represent countries of the world. And so here in the software, it's interactive. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. It's a map, so if I want to do some measuring, I can use my measuring tool and measure the length of different countries, or just do quick measurements. Looks like I'm making something the shape of the Big Dipper. That was unintentional, but it looks kind of cool. So all kinds of functionality is available in this software. So there's our countries, and now I'm going to add Paul's route as well. And notice down here in the lower left, as I add these data layers, they're showing up on the left. And Paul's route comes in. When you add this data, it comes in just with random symbols and colors. And so those are completely customizable. So I'm going to make this a thick red line so it stands out a lot better. Those countries shaded in blue is a little bit too overwhelming for the eyes, so I'll make those just a light gray. And it's so easy just to customize what you're doing in a software like this. So now I'm going to invite Shea to speak about her experience using QGIS and making that great map that we just saw. I'm going to add one layer here, and maybe she can talk about, this is urban areas, maybe she can talk about the urban areas and also her kind of experience mapping.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So right now you're adding in the urban areas, essentially they're the urban footprints as photographed by satellite images and mapped by these images. So I think, you know, my experience is unique because I had never, you know, made a map before this workshop, and I had never used QGIS or any other desktop software, and I found it to be a little bit intimidating at first. As you can see, there are a lot of options, a lot of buttons, a lot of colors, a lot of different folders on the left there. But I think, you know, you directed us so clearly, step by step, to the exact options that we needed to focus on so that we weren't so overwhelmed. Halfway through the workshop, I was feeling it. Like, oh, okay, now I can grasp this application. It didn't seem to be as difficult as I thought it was going to be. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things as I'm adding these data sets is just the sheer volume of data that's out there, and how you are able to, you know, add these. Look at this. I mean, you know, roads for the entire world, right? I'm zoomed into, you know, the Out-of-Eden Walk area, but this is a, you know, this is a global data set here. And another extremely nice data set to have is this one here, which is essentially a raster, which means it's an image, and this was made using elevation data. So over the course of about 15 years, the space shuttle actually, as it was flying around different parts of the Earth, shot down radar beams and measured elevation every 100 meters across the entire Earth's surface. So that elevation can be rendered to look like the mountains, or, you know, shaded relief in this case. And then the other thing that was applied to this data set is shading, so that it matches sort of the land cover that's out there, where, you know, desert is in brown, and then forested areas are in green, and mountain peaks are in white. So, you know, Julia, I know you've played with this software and done a little mapping with it. What are your comments on using desktop GIS software?
Yeah, I was happy to be able to join the DC workshop at the National Geographic, and I'm not the most digitally adept person, so like Shea said, at first the software was intimidating to me, but my favorite part about using it was that I am normally hesitant to click around in an unfamiliar web platform, you know, because I have a track record of losing everything, you know, or like taking some step that wipes everything you've just worked to create. And I noticed in this software, you don't really have the option to mess it up. Like, you can kind of get into it and explore it, and in that way it's kind of strangely straightforward, and you can click around and not be afraid to mess things up. So I think it's something that you can really learn through just going in and exploring kind of fearlessly, and then suddenly you kind of understand the way it works and how not to lose what you just created. So you don't have to worry about making some sort of irreversible mistake, which I think is kind of a fun way to get used to a new platform.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and this is something I tell my students over and over is that you can't break this, and you just have to experiment with all the bells and whistles, all the buttons, try them out, because in the end, you're not going to ruin the software, and you have to be kind of aggressive and then try a bunch of different things. So what I'm showing now is what's called this print composer, where once you've added your data and sort of made the look and feel that you want from your map, then you start adding other elements on here like the legend, and let's see, we'll add a title up here. And essentially, you can take this to, a finished cartographic product. And, another thing I like to tell people is that the quality of the map is not based on the skill of the cartographer. It's really based on the time you spend making the map. And in this environment, I could spend a lot more time and get the colors just right and add the different elements. Don't have time for that on the webinar, but I'm hoping everyone uses our tutorial that will show where to get that at the end of the webinar, and uses this software called QGIS, which can be extremely powerful in making custom maps. So at that point, let me just show one more thing here. I can export this as an image or a PDF, and then I have a map similar to this one that Shea showed here. So let's transition and talk about an entirely different map. And this one is a web map. And this one, I think, is a whole lot more, much more exciting in terms of just being able to put this together. Let me adjust the size of my browser here. So this summer, we had a staff meeting for this project, and of course, since Paul is traveling around the world, the staff meeting happened where he was, and that's in this country called Georgia, in the city of Tbilisi. And so while I was there, I had this little GPS device that I'm holding up to my video cam here, and this is a different GPS recorder. It's just a very small black box, essentially, that when you turn it on, it records everywhere you go. And so then I wanted to kind of show one of the walks that we took, and this is the result here. So the blue line you see on the map is the actual route that I mapped with my GPS, and then the pictures I took with my iPhone 4, right, just a standard cell phone. And there's a way to enable what's called geotagging on your phone, so that it records, it uses the little GPS chip in here to record the latitude, longitude of your picture. And so I did that as we took this 45-minute walk or so along the river in Tbilisi, and then loaded it up into this mapping platform. And this is a free open source platform that anyone can use. So this is kind of what inspired me to show everyone how to do this in a step-by-step tutorial. We get a lot of people here at Harvard asking, I have photos, I know where they go, I'd love to use maps as a way to tell the story that go with the photos. And so that resulted in, and I'll finish it here showing the end of our walk. So here's Paul at the restaurant that we went to at the very end. And so what I did is I put together this tutorial. And so I'll let everyone look at this on their own time, but essentially it walks you through how to enable geotagging of your photos with your smartphone. And of course, we realize that not everyone has a smartphone, so I also have a link to explaining how to actually take photos with a regular camera and then use this GeoSetter software to then locate your photos where they are so that they'll show up in the map on the right place. So the tutorial essentially shows you what app to download if you're going to map your GPS route. But of course, not everyone has a smartphone, or you might not have access to a GPS. So I also have a link showing you how to actually trace in your route. So essentially, all you need is a camera and a computer to do this exercise. and make one of these, what we're calling story maps. So that's just a quick glimpse at the tutorial. 10 steps, right? Just 10 simple steps. And of course, there's lots of technology to figure out along the way. And I thought in the workshops, we actually did this exercise. And Shea was one of my students in the first workshop in Cambridge. And this is the map that she made. And so Shea, I'll turn it over to you to talk about this experience.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. I guess the first thing I want to point out is how user-friendly this application really is. I didn't feel like I really had to learn anything new in order to use it, so that was a breath of fresh air compared to the QDS application, but it also is user-friendly as well. So I didn't go into the mapping activity with a particular story in mind, but was really excited to experience the story unfold as I was walking our route and taking pictures. So I documented this sort of juxtaposition of beauty, the beautiful autumn foliage, and the river, with all of the more mundane traits of the city. I found myself particularly interested in photographing garbage, actually, and how it's situated in contrast to all of these natural views. I kept my captions short and sweet, but I could have easily developed the narration. That's one of the customizable options, is that you can just have a caption itself, or you can have a caption and a little story that goes with it. So that's kind of neat. And the mapping portion of the activity didn't actually take more than about an hour. I think the most exciting part about the map is how interactive it is. So you can zoom in and zoom out and understand how each image is in relation to, the rest of the world. So where each image is located in relation to Cambridge, in relation to the United States, in relation to the globe. And I guess another great feature of this app is that it's so customizable. You're able to really make the map your own. As you can see, all of these colors, and I feel like I was able to really make it mine. So I enjoyed it. I've actually made a couple maps since then with this app.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of different templates and forms you can use. And speaking to that ability to customize, let me just look back at the map I made. I used the exact same templates that Julia did. This is not a picture here, this overview map of Georgia. I actually made this using GIS software, but it's an image, and you're also able to upload images of other maps you might make and put it into this platform. Notice down here in my narration, I talk about the Out of Eden Walk, and I have a hyperlink to that. So it's multimedia, right? So you can embed videos here, you can have links to other websites. And my map looks drastically different from Shea's, and that's because you have all these custom, ability to customize. So, I just sort of chose these earthy colors, but if I wanted to, I could go in and, just with a few clicks here, make this about as loud as you could possibly imagine with the colors here. You can change the colors of your icons. And then, of course, you can edit your narration just by clicking on it. And like Shea said, it just walks the user through the experience. And for a first-time user, I've found students understand this easier than almost any kind of mapping that I've taught them. And fortunately, this platform just became available this year, and there's been a rise in sort of this story map thing where people are realizing, wow, it's really great to be able to use a map to tell stories, and it's so easily acceptable. So let me just show a couple more slides before we finish, and if you have questions, please think about those and typing those into the chat window. We're down to about 7 or 8 minutes left here. And I just want to briefly mention Google Earth. I think a lot of you have probably heard of Google Earth, but there's all kinds of things you can do with it. And at this Google Earth Learn website, it walks you through a bunch of tutorials. And you can, I think for students it's a great way to learn just where things are, and especially things like the named lines of latitude and longitude, like the equator and the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, and how this whole grid of latitude, longitude plays out. And of course you can add geographic data as well, like I've added Paul's route into this Google Earth here. And it's three-dimensional, so it's pretty flashy. If I type in a building, a famous building like the Eiffel Tower, it's a good chance that that's going to be modeled in 3D, and of course it understands where that is, and so now I can kind of get these rich views of 3D environments. So that's Google Earth. I'll let you all play with that one on your own. And at this point, I want to again ask everyone to let us know if you have questions. If you can enter those into the chat box using the chat button there, we're happy to answer your questions here. I think some of you have microphones, and if you want to try speaking, then we can try that as well. I know I told you all to mute before. But as people are thinking of questions, I guess the conclusions here is start mapping today. Go and try this Batch Geo tool. It's so easy. It's so quick. I have a link to the website where we're going to host all the materials from the webinar today, including a recording to the webinar. Looks like we got a question there. Will the slideshow be sent out to us? So what I'll do, I'll send out a link to a website that's going to contain the slideshow to download. It's going to contain the tutorials. It'll contain a link to the story map tutorial, and it'll also contain the QGIS tutorial. And we invite everyone to start making maps, whether it's a PDF map with QGIS, or if it's online story map, or simply a Batch Geo map. If you want to share that with us, we're going to have a feature on the Out of Eden Walk website that showcases student-made maps, and we'll be happy to add those. Any comments from the other hosts at this point?
I'll jump in, Chat.
Okay, great.
Well, just to say that I think the array of tools that you've shown us today, I know that we're really excited on the Out of Eden Learn team about how we might integrate them into our existing curriculum. And it strikes me that the technology just keeps getting better, because I think that some of the earlier versions of the software that we have looked at were really quite challenging in terms of what you needed to learn to be able to use them. But Shea has testified that these are very usable, and I'm wondering if you see this trend continuing, that these kind of mapping tools are just going to get easier and easier, more prevalent, and kind of built into phones and other such thing as we think, as Paul's walk continues, where things might be heading.
Yeah, the trend is definitely essentially enabling anyone with a computer to make maps. And things are getting easier. I mean, making a web map 6 or 7 years ago was, you had to have specialized programming language knowledge, and it was just so difficult. I mean, and we're just light years ahead of that now. And specialists like myself who've been doing this for years and years, we know how to use the software and make maps, but all of us mappers are realizing that everyone else can make maps as well, and so the tools are becoming easier and easier. And part of our job at the CGA at Harvard is to disseminate these tools that that allow us to make maps in educational materials like this. So we had another question here. What is the name of the website that Shea explained? I wonder if you're referring to her per map. Let me just paste that in the browser, the chat window rather, and everyone can go and check out that interactively. I think that's what you meant, Hollis. Okay, great.
Could someone write that down? Just say one more thing. You know, just re-emphasize and encourage folks to really try these tutorials out. I think the clarity with which you lay out step by step each tutorial is extremely helpful, and that to not be intimidated by the applications, because once you create a map, there's nothing more powerful than to see your map as a final product and to get really excited about the story that your map tells. And it'll only encourage you to create more maps. Specifically for students, I think this is a really great and exciting chance for students to be able to tell their stories through cartography and to be young cartographers.
Yeah, and this, so what I'm showing here is the actual, so this is a Word document we're going to make available for anyone to download, and educators, I encourage you to take this Word document and insert prompts, you know, insert your questions for the class as they go along and using this. And then at the very end of the Word document, there are all kinds of tutorials for further learning on this particular software here. So I see we have a few more questions coming in, and we will stick around and answer those, but I know a lot of you probably have to leave at 1 o'clock. So I would just like to extend a hearty thank you for everyone that attended, including thank you to my co-hosts here. And I wish you a great afternoon, and I hope everyone starts mapping today. So like I said, we'll stick around as long as there are questions, and we have a question here from Andreas, and he's asking, what is this this black box? I think you were referring to this guy and this GPS that I used. And I actually, I'll paste in, let's see, I actually have a link to that right here in my tutorial. This is called a Q-Stars travel recorder. And so if you're interested in getting a device like this, these are about $90, and I'll just paste the URL to that travel recorder in there. And the nice part about this is it's small and light, fits in your pocket. There's no screen on it, you know, so you can't do any navigation with this, but you can't get distracted by it either, right? A lot of times you might get distracted by the screen and mess up, you know, whatever you're doing. This just logs data. You plug it into your computer, and you upload your data, and that's it. I mean, it makes a file that when you load it to the map looks exactly like this blue line here on the map. Okay, so once again, thanks everyone for attending. I think I've covered the questions, but if there's more, send those to info@outofelenwalk.com. And with that, I will say goodbye, and once again, thanks for attending.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks everyone who is here. Great to see you all.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.